Yes, the genius of Jesus. When you're asked who the smartest person is that you know, does someone come to mind? Did you point to Aaron? You pointed to your husband. Oh, Brian Ross is in the back. There you go. Okay, good. We have a few people in the room that are hitting the top of this chart. What makes them unique? Why are they the smartest? What does your brain start to do? Do they have intellectual knowledge? Does it seem like they could just navigate life really well? Do they have like the knowledge that's only helpful at like trivia nights at a pub? You know, there's like that knowledge that just does not seem to further life in any way unless you're going for a trophy at one of those nights. But like really, when you're asked that question, who do you think of? Who is the smartest person that you know? And then also, who's the smartest person you just think of in general? Who seems to have a genius that you don't have, something that stands out? They're just absolutely great at it. Those questions are a little bit unfair when we ask it in this space with that title already up there, because you probably know I'm offering that Jesus might be the smartest person that we could ever think of. But really, if you were asked that on the street on a Tuesday, you're going to think about someone you know or someone in probably recent history in some way, shape, or form. And if we actually paused and asked the question, is Jesus potentially the smartest person to ever walk the earth? Did he have a way of knowing things and seeing through things and having an understanding of things that might actually be the most helpful to people? Now, I don't know about you, but when you think of maybe some of the extreme geniuses that have walked the face of this earth, they were always like a little bit different. They didn't necessarily fit in with maybe the larger crowd. They could be actually so smart that you can't even see how smart they are because they're almost too far ahead of you. When I was at UC Santa Barbara for a year, there was plenty of students like that. I got in because I played soccer, not because of my 2.8 graduating GPA. And there were kids who were there because of their GPA, and it clearly showed. And I was a fish out of water very quickly. But there's something about them that are also different and can almost challenge the norm and the status quo. And it can actually feel like what they have to offer might not actually be what's best. That what they're saying seems interesting, but I don't know if that's for me. I would offer through this series, as we're doing the Genius of Jesus, through what's known as his greatest teaching, the Sermon on the Mount, that he is a genius. And genius may be being simply defined as being able to manage life how it really is. Being able to manage life how it really is. That's an interesting concept because you and I try to manage life all the time, like daily, like this morning on the way here and after church this afternoon, and even right now, like your brain is still trying to resolve something from this week or going into this next week. We're always managing. We're managing relationships. We're managing our job. We're managing our insides and outsides. Like there's just so much that we're trying to manage. But how much of it is like the actual reality of life? And how much is it is just our heads spinning and our anxious thoughts and our worries and maybe the way we want things to be, and we're trying to manage that really well? Jesus seems to have a genius that manages life really well as it is, that also asks us to see life a little bit differently than we naturally do. And that might be the best way forward for us as we try those things on. If you're new to church, if you're new to the scriptures, I'm so glad you're here. If you're trying to figure out faith in Jesus, or you have questions or doubts, or you're a skeptic in so many ways, the Sermon on the Mount is actually one of the greatest places to start, because this is oftentimes referred to as Jesus' greatest teachings. These would be his greatest hits to say. Many would say that it's not he sat there and just said all of these chapters 5, 6, and 7 in one, but it's a lot of his teachings put together, captured by Matthew, one of the writers of one of the 4 Gospels that captures the life of Jesus, his teachings, his works, demonstration. And there's a couple things that he talks about quite a bit in the Sermon on the Mount that I think is worth drawing our attention to. Before he kicks things off, it talks about him kind of starting this earthly ministry, and then he says this phrase that's really interesting and hangs throughout the rest. In Matthew 4, when Jesus starts to begin to preach and to teach, he says this: "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near. Repent simply meaning turning away or turning towards a different direction. And then the kingdom of heaven has come near. We don't use kingdom language. That is very foreign. But the idea of heaven also would be like, okay, that thing up in the clouds is coming near. What does that actually mean? I thought I was to like go somewhere, and that's why I became a Christian after I die. But he's saying that something is coming near to a group of people, to you and I, to those then, and it's called the kingdom of heaven, or also known as the kingdom of God. Essentially, this kingdom of heaven is the range of God's effective will. The range of God's effective will. Meaning that this thing of heaven, this thing of God's kingdom breaking in, it starts to show up more when God has his way. If he was to have his way with your life, with my life, with our city, with poverty, with injustice, with wealth, with whatever it is, it would look like God had his hand on it and it was going the way in which he intentionally designed it to be. And this thing is drawing near towards us for God to have his way here on earth, the way in which he intentionally designed it. Does anybody desire that? Like, would you not want the way in which God intended for things to be? Maybe a different way. Would you love to like have less worry and stress and fear in your life? Would you love for relationships to go peacefully and well? Would you love your sense of identity and what you're doing in life to feel true and right and good? Would you love to see things outward in the landscape of our world look like what's referred to in the Bible as shalom, wholeness, all things to be working together as they should? And that's the invitation when he says this is drawing near. And then he goes on in this Sermon on the Mount. He's talking to a bunch of religious leaders and a bunch of people on the margins. There's a large group of folks on the side of this mountain that he's talking to. And he says this, "For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." Now, really quickly, this was a massive dig to people like me, the paid religious professionals of the time, because they had it all figured out. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were the ones that did everything according to the way in which it was supposed to be. They upheld the law. They had clean clothes. They were doing everything on behalf of God in the right way. And he says to all these people, unless you actually do better than those people who have it all figured out. And they're like, hold on, what do you mean? Aren't we like the sample? Like, we're the example of what's supposed to be happening here. And unless you sitting here today, me standing here today, unless our righteousness actually surpasses of those that are doing everything right and are holding to all the laws, we would actually miss out on this kingdom of heaven, on the things in which I would offer to you that we desire most. We may not actually participate in. And there's something for us to take up there. This word righteousness, diakosune, righteousness in Matthew, I love this definition, as a whole person behavior that accords with God's nature, will, and coming kingdom. The righteous person, according to Matthew, is the one who follows Jesus in his way of being in the world. Do you see the marriage between these two? The kingdom of heaven and then also righteousness. This idea that God is bringing something here. He wants the world to operate in a certain way, and if he could have his way, it would look a certain way. And then there's an invitation for you and I to actually participate in that same way, that we're not just here by accident, that there's something that you and I can actually look forward to each day, even when we may feel like there's nothing to look forward to because we're looking for God's work and his activity and not just my own and not just my neighbor's. There's a beautiful marriage that he has invited every single person to, and he's the one that went first. He is the one that came near you and I first and then says, hey, I also want you to participate this in a way that is going to bring fullness to your life. And then he says, because of this righteousness, it would start to have a certain effect in our world. He said, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. That as we become more virtuous, more good, more beautiful, more kind, he's inviting us to actually shine this light, and that people would see this goodness taking effect in our lives. That you and I have an ability, by God's grace, to have influence in our world that is looked to, that is seen. I don't know if you've ever woken up in the middle of the night, the room's dark, and you're trying to feel where your bed is so you don't stub your toe. Like, all you want in that moment is a little bit of light, just so you cannot hurt yourself. Like, light is desired in a world of darkness. And he has looked out at the crowd and said, in this righteousness, there's something that you get to bring that is desired, that's wanted, that will affect change in so many ways. Now, what's really interesting as we get through this greatest teaching of Jesus, he says all this stuff about righteousness. We are to be people whose light shines. Our righteousness, this good deeds, is supposed to show to other people. Other people would know God by some of these good deeds. And then starting off in verse 6, he says, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others. Be careful to not do the thing I've just been inviting you to do for this last chapter and a half. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So hold on. You've been talking about this beautiful thing of righteousness, this life of you and I becoming more whole and peace-filled and good and beautiful and kind. Like, we're getting excited here. Like, we have something to do and to go live for. But then don't do it where other people see it. Well, if we're supposed to bring light and it's supposed to do this thing, then how do we have people see our good deeds and be attracted to it but not do it for them to be, is this confusing? I don't know. I feel like when people are like, I can't believe in Christianity because the Bible contradicts itself, you could point to this one and say the Bible contradicts itself. We could go down that rabbit trail. I'm not going to this morning. But Jesus seems to be drawing attention. If he is a genius, if he can make the world, he can manage a life in a way that it really is this a mistake? Or is he inviting us to see something in a certain way by grabbing our attention, by flipping the script and saying, do not practice your righteousness in front of others? I don't know about you, but there are moments in which throughout my life and ongoing, there's things that I do in my life or things that happen that when other people notice, I feel better about myself. Is that just me? Like, someone compliments you on something you did and you're like, oh, yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty cool. I could remember we were at Thanksgiving one year with a bunch of family and extended family and friends, and most don't do church. And this was a number of years ago. I'd started to be in pastoral ministry, and they asked me to lead the prayer for the family. And so I did, just out loud prayed. And afterwards, a few people were like, wow, you really know what you're doing. Like, I don't know if I could pray like that. And there's that weird part of I don't want to, but I was also like, oh, I can do something a little bit differently than what most people can. Like, there's something about us that when things are for good and people find it to be helpful, we feel a little bit better about ourselves. There's something attractive about that. And at the same time, Jesus seems to be giving us a word of caution. When you do something in your job that you're praised for, when there's something in your neighborhood that you're known for, when there's something in the city that others seem to be looking to you for, and we can just keep going down the list over and over again, it seems that there could be benefit to other people that Jesus is saying, go and do that. And at the same time, here is a word of caution. John Stott, someone I leaned on in reading this week, he says, it is our human cowardice which made him say, let your light shine before others, and our human vanity which made him tell us to be aware of practicing our righteousness in front of others. He quotes A.B. Bruce, who sums it up well when he writes that we are to show when tempted to hide and hide when tempted to show. There's something about the Christian life that you and I tend to hide ourselves from. There's something about this kingdom of heaven breaking in, the invitation for you and I to grow in righteousness so we can participate fully, that because of our brokenness, our insecurities, the things we're not certain of, past hurts and pains, whatever it is, we then kind of retract. Like, I don't want to let my light shine that much. I don't know if it should go into that area. I don't know what it's going to mean for them. And what if, and we pull back. But then there's the other side. Oh, I could get praise if I go this way. Oh, you guys like when I do this? Oh yeah, no, it's okay. They don't know if I can, like, we start to find ways of compromise. This was primarily my high school and early college life. Like, I would find the thing that the people wanted me to do to be liked, and I would go and do it, and then I could just keep doing that, and more people would applaud. You know, that breaks down eventually, because you're more so just like managing your image, and when you manage your image, you become imaginary, and then people don't even like you, they like the imaginary you. That sucks. Like, that's just like no way to live a life. And Jesus is inviting us to pay attention to something different than what we might mostly be drawn to. And he's going to do it in 3 ways. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the first one, because then over the next 2 weeks, we're actually going to press more into the 2 following examples he gives. But he uses a very common day thing that this culture would be participating in. It would be around giving, it would be around praying, and it would be around fasting. Praying, giving, and fasting. Here we go. Matthew 6, 2-4. So when you give to the needy. So I want to point out the first sentence. So when you give, he's assuming that they are giving to the needy. Jesus' first words are assuming that you and I are already doing something. Those that he was speaking to then and those that we're speaking to now, we're already participating in this thing that he says. When you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by others. Truly I tell you that you have received the reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Like Jesus, he loves speaking in hyperbole. He uses really big statements to draw attention. This idea of do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that's impossible. Like, literally right now, everything that you and I do, our hands see each other. Like, there's no way of stopping that. In the other, I think, is he's not actually saying that many went around blowing trumpets, but he's drawing to them, there's something you might be looking for praise when you go and give to the needy. Now, it's really interesting about this, that there's a Jewish giving structure that they all would have been familiar with and participating in here. So first and foremost, giving would look a number of ways. There's actually 2 more in here, but I don't want you to feel too overwhelmed. First is just the tithe. Right off the top, God's people participated in a way in which the first 10% of their wealth, their income, their grain, what they farmed, whatever it was, would go straight to the temple. It would go toward the Levites and the priest. It would go towards the way in which people worship together to the gathering. There was a second offering that would pop up in years 1 and 2, and then year 3 would pop up as another 10% on top of. So very quickly, you're going above and beyond 10%. Now, the third year tithe would rotate. Every 3 years, it would be for the poor and the marginalized. And it would go directly towards those folks. On the other side, you have a free will offerings. Those were variable. It's just out of the randomness. You could be like, man, I'm so thankful for God. Here is more, God, of what you have given me. And it would be a little bit more spontaneous. You would have gleanings. So in agrarian culture, those who farmed would actually leave extras on the margins of their crop so that sojourners and the poor could come through and pick up the extra. That would be ballpark of 2 to 5%. And then here at the bottom, there would be alms. 3 to 10% was directly to the poor. So anyone who ever asks the questions of, do we still give today? Do I tithe? Do I tithe 10%? Do I tithe off the gross or the what's the other thing? Net? Yeah, there you go. Which one? Most of our American Western culture questions around giving are trying to find the least amount to give. It's never, hey, I want to, so I can give off the gross. I'll go give off the gross. Oh, even when my tax refund comes back next year, I'll give off of that. Like, it's never going upward. It's always us trying to keep more. Is that, all of us? Okay. So what is happening here, they are above 20%, well above it, very quickly in their life. You and I, oftentimes, depending on where we're at in our giving, sometimes it looks like we just kind of give God a tip. if we're just honest, compared to what the ways of life with God would look like in this time. Now, what's really interesting, he talks about giving to the needy. What he's pointing out in this moment is this bottom one, almsgiving. So they're already doing all the other stuff, and then so when he assumes that they're giving, he's assuming that they're going above and beyond and actually doing the extra stuff too. So there's a very basic baseline, and then you can keep growing in it. This was directly connected to the Old and New Testament, the way of God of having mercy, compassion, and life with the poor and the marginalized. What this has become over time, we love partnering with organizations. Hospitals and orphanages came from Christians because they were already doing it in their own lives and in their community. And it was the third year tithe, and it was the almsgivings that was going towards caring for those around them that had none. Caring for those around them had no way of caring for themselves. This idea of one day's wage is this, that you and I are already regular giving. Hopefully we're growing in the percentage in which we give every year. This is something Caitlin and I keep working through, is like as we go, may we become more generous over time. May we live on less over time. And so we set the minimum floor at 10%, and we continue to work to kind of give above and beyond that. And so this is an invitation for every single one of us, wherever we're at, to participate in almsgiving. To participate in Jesus saying, I am drawing near to the oppressed, the marginalized, the brokenhearted, the least, the last, and the lost. We then get invited to participate in that in the same way. And because they were doing it in community, this is why it's important, Andrew asking that last question to Krista, how can we then participate? Because this would mean they're in community, their feet would be following what they're giving to also. So now they are in a relationship. Again, we've looked to organizations, hospitals, orphanages, which need them. I don't know how to run an orphanage. That's not my gift mix. But yet what can happen is we can actually separate ourselves. Maybe we could write a check, which again, may we do that. But now we're actually not in touch with poverty. Now we're not participating in God's mercy and relationship. And so it's important to follow this up with the ways in which we can interact with our partner organizations in unique ways and 1,000 other ways. What breaks your heart? What are you grateful for? Follow that. You will be participating in good when you do that. So what's happened here is Jesus has given caution. May your good deeds work towards generosity towards other people, especially those on the margins. But may you not do it for your own praise. Because then he says right there at the end, then your Father who sees what is what is done in secret will reward you. They have received their reward in full by blowing their trumpet. If it's the applause of people while you do any religious activity, you'll get that. You'll get that. But you might miss out on the greater thing. That God is saying there's ways of you growing closer to me. And in this, it's through your generosity. And it's through moving towards the poor and the marginalized. The next one is prayer. I'm going to breeze through these. We're going to have a quick conversation, and then we're going to go into ministry time. He says this, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. You see the pattern? Again, he assumes that they are praying. He then calls them, is it on the screen? Cheat code? Is it underlined? Hypocrites. Good. Okay, sweet. You guys say it like it's a bad word. Is that not a good thing to say out loud? But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans. That one's not going to be up there. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask them. Do you see the pattern? He's assuming that you are doing something that looks like religious activity, but very quickly it can be done in the wrong way. You can actually miss what you're intended to get through it for something that is far less cheaper. That there is a legitimate need that you and I have to be in relationship with God, and yes, yet we can fill it with an illegitimate solution like applause from other people. He continues, when you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received the reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you're fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Do you see the pattern? He's assuming that they are fasting, that they are creating space to have life with him, to depend on something different than themselves and what they naturally depend on, and that would be filled with something else. But again, if you want to go around looking beat up and people ask you in this time, and even now, I participate in fasting and I can feel the temptation, like, oh, I feel so holy today. I want other people to see how holy I am by fast. It can happen. It can creep in so fast. And he's saying, man, go put oil on your head, do your hair, get dressed, wash your face, look like you are not fasting, because the last thing you want to do is find satisfaction through the applause of people and miss out on what fasting truly is for, the abstaining from food, so that we can create space for God. And then oftentimes what we can do is, instead of paying for the meals in which we can take that money and we can give to the poor. Almsgiving. Ways of participating in mercy and justice and compassion. So here's how we're going to close. One of the words over and over again was what? Hypocrites. Yeah. So he seemed to make a big point out of that. Now, what you and I think of as hypocrites is what? Says one thing and does the other. Okay, that's going to be a little bit hard for us to do, just because that's the way like we read it as American Westerners in our English language. What's going on here, though, is the imagery is play acting. So this would come from a Greek description and language that was used to describe those who wore masks in plays. They were play acting, as if you went to a drama and you don't know who is behind it. They are doing something that is not true to who they actually are. So it's not just about the actions. It's that I'm trying to posture something, to offer you something about myself that is not actually true of who I really am. The authentic self, the whole self. I'd be curious this morning, where do you get caught in that? Where are the places in your life in which you need to project a certain image or a way of being that receives something but is not fully connected to who you actually are? Outward behavior, but doing so with the wrong motives. Steve Zook wrote a curriculum for our groups in this season, working through the Sermon on the Mount. It's been fantastic. And I looked at this week's to see what he came up with on some of the questions. And he had two. I'm going to have you pause for one, and then as the team comes up, they're going to strum. And I just want you to reflect on this one question. Jesus uses the term hypocrite, which is a Greek term referring to a stage actor, to describe the performative nature of this false type of righteousness. Are there situations in which you fall into the trap of religious or moral performance for others as a way to earn their approval? And I just want you to sit for a second. This could be for the approval of someone in this room. A lot of us are still trying to prove something to maybe our parents, authority figures, past people in our lives. Where are the pressures in your work and vocation to put something on different than who you are? Where are you finding applause in your life right now and it feels pretty good? I would offer that the things that come up are the exact places in which we miss the depth in which God is offering us in our lives. That what you and I truly need, what you and I were truly created for, is to be connected to an all-loving being that has a way and a purpose for our life, to be taken up in a certain way for the sake of what he's intending to do. The way in which he's trying to manage reality in our life, we get to participate in so that there's wholeness and that you and I get to be a person of wholeness. We don't have to wear masks. We don't have to do things for performance. We don't have to look a certain way. So I was working through this week. I realized one of the things at that Thanksgiving table was still true a few weeks ago. I might use this next week or a couple weeks, but Caitlin and I gave something away of significance recently, and I questioned a lot of, should we give this away? This is actually some monetary value that could be helpful for our life. But I felt like we were supposed to give something away, that this specific thing. I still had these thoughts. Are they going to say thank you enough for this act of generosity? Could the timeliness be done in a way in which maybe the neighbors would notice? Like these are the things that popped up in a what I would call a radical call of generosity that was deeply in my soul to do. But yet these things creep up, and it happens so fast. John Stott says, we can bluff a human audience. They can be taken in by our performance. We can fool them into supposing that we are genuine in our giving, praying, fasting when we are only acting. But God is not mocked. We cannot deceive him. For God looks on the heart. That is why to do anything in order to be seen by other people is bound to degrade it, while to do it to be seen by God is equally bound to give it dignity. So we must choose our audience carefully. If we prefer human spectators, we shall lose our Christian integrity. The same will happen if we become our own audience, so we must choose God for our audience. As Jesus watched the people putting their gifts in the temple treasury, so God watches us as we give. As we pray and fast secretly, he is there in the secret place. God hates hypocrisy but loves reality. That is why it is only when we are aware of his presence that our giving, praying, and fasting will be real. I wonder what spaces in your life right now are putting you in secret places with God so that he could give you what you need. Where are you too busy? Where are you too frantic? Where are you saying yes to the things you know and don't want to say yes to? Are you pulling away in ways that Jesus has offered to you and I so that we could find the depth in the relationship that God has for you and I, that we could live and be these people of righteousness? My summation is a person living from true inner goodness through practices of self-denying good will experience more of God's all-consuming good. Each of these are practices of you and I denying ourselves, denying what we most naturally want, esteem, posture, significance, climbing a social ladder, being liked by others. And we're saying, God, I want to be loved by you. I want to experience your mercy and your goodness and your compassion. I want to experience you. May my life be for an audience of one. And that is what it looks like for us to let our light shine so that others will see our good deeds and our Father in heaven will be glorified. Why don't we stand and sing together?